I think when we are supported at the deepest level of who we are, I think it clearly, unquestionably makes a difference in the tenor of our day.
Now let's start at the start. You've chosen enchanted love as the focus. What do you mean by that?
Okay, I think, you know, often we fall in love, right? You fall in love and you're just high and you're just like helium toes. You're just in this altered state of consciousnness, right? So the dominant social wisdom says that
that doesn't last,
and that ultimately you come to ultimately reality sets in. That's what the dominant social wisdom says. That doesn't last, that high, that euphoria doesn't last, and that's because it was all projection and it was all infatuation and delusion, and then reality sets in. Well, after a certain point in my life, I realized, just my truth is I don't have to buy that. I think the exact opposite is the truth. That was reality. From a spiritual perspective, that was reality, and then non-reality set in. What really happened is that we, at this point in our development, do not have the personality structures capable of handling that much love, taking in and staying with that level of right perception. That euphoria is our natural state. That euphoria is a spiritual high. The issue is that you did not see the person really. The issue is that you saw them so really. You saw them the way God would see them, and that's why you were happy.
How do you sustain it? Listen, most people are out there saying, you know, if that could be true.
Yeah, thank you very much.
That would be wonderful. But that runs contrary to my experience. I mean, old Bill is looking a little ratty to me. You know,
the reason it is contrary to our experience is because of what I said before. We are trained to be judgmental. We are trained into the ways of the unforgiving mind. So it's like a steel trap. That door, we go back to our judgmentalness. We go back to our focus on personality rather than spirit. We go back to our focus on attachment to past and future rather than the present. We go back to our to our focus on externals rather than internals. And so the essence of the person, which we had grasped for that very short time, is lost to us. So that's why, and that's what I'm working with in this book, is what is the role of our spiritual journey in our romantic lives, and what's the role of our romantic journey in our spiritual lives, so that my suggestion here is that it is a spiritual practice, and only a spiritual practice, which can keep us open in mind and heart and eyes and ears to a place where we're capable of sustained.
Is this what when you talk about the sacred dimension of romance?
That's exactly what I'm talking about. The sacred dimension means listen, if I've lived with you for 10 or 20 years, I know what your weaknesses are. And there's part of my mind that wants to point them out to you as often as possible.
Because they're irritating.
Thank you, thank you. Well, you get enough of that from me on any given day, and you're no longer in love.
Tell me about forgiveness and why it's important, and what you have to do to forgive in a day-to-day relationship.
Well, forgiveness means the choice to focus on people's innocence rather than their guilt. It's not that people don't make mistakes. We all make mistakes. But the issue is just a more sophisticated version of, do you choose to see the glass as half empty or half full? What in you am I going to focus on today? And so many times, people we love the most receive our greatest judgment. And so, you know, you're nagged enough, it's like, who wants it? Or if you nag someone else enough, if you're focusing on their faults enough, then your own mind has evidence for why they're not good enough.
Sure, of course.
So people don't stay in there to move through those conflicts often, to see the beauty which lies beyond. Now, then the issue becomes, okay, I could maybe convince you intellectually that forgiveness is key, but even then, it takes more than an intellectual commitment to forgive in order to be able to do it. And that's why prayer is so important. That's why meditation is so important. That's why serious spiritual practice, really building that into the dynamic of a relationship, is so important. Because if you keep it body-oriented, number one, body is where your mistakes, the body level is where we make our mistakes, our behavior, etc. Or else, you know, the high that we normally associate with is sex. But ultimately, if the other stuff starts to go away, then so will the sexual